It's all about truth. All of it. Every single thing. All boils down to the truth. We all want truth. The truth will set you free. All right, welcome to the program, ladies and gentlemen. This is Press for Truth Live. I am your host, Dan Dix. Today is Tuesday, May the 31st, 2016, and we got a great show lined up for you today, folks. Today, a little later in the program, we're going to be joined in studio by the one and only Walter Block. He's an author, lecturer, one of the world's leading libertarian / anarchist thinkers who have recently launched this Libertarian For Trump campaign, I guess you could call it, where he's trying to drum up some support amongst the libertarian community to get behind Donald Trump. So I'm very, very interested to get his thoughts on all of that. We're also going to be joined on the line by the dollar vigilante himself, Jeff Berwick, and he's going to help us break down this whole concept of, voting for the lesser of evils, or even using a political platform in order to spread your message out there. Me personally, I've been following the American elections for quite a long time, and just with my own understanding and research into looking into this, I've always been under the understanding that in this day and age, you just don't get to become president of the United States unless you have been raised through the respective secret societies, or if you've been essentially selected, not elected. And I used to think that up to the point, I always thought that, after John F. K., there hasn't been any real presidents. They've all been selected until 2008 and the 2012 Ron Paul phenomenon. And when that started happening, that changed things for me a little bit, because all of a sudden, I was agreeing with this guy 100%. I was liking everything this guy was saying. But at the same time, folks, even back then when it was very popular to be behind Ron Paul, I was telling people, everything he says is fantastic, but if he becomes president of the United States, well, then I would have to wonder about the guy. Because, as I said, in this day and age, you just don't get to that point in this position at this point in the game. But here we are, fast forward to 2016, and now we have Donald Trump in the runnings. And it's come down to Trump and Hillary. So this is going to be a fascinating topic to talk about today, especially because of the fact that it's not, it doesn't always just come down to the Republican and Democrats. There are other parties out there, namely the Libertarian Party. And that's a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today as well. We recently saw that Gary Johnson won the nomination for the Libertarian Party. And this is a former Republican governor who has also selected for his vice president running mate another former Republican governor. So once again, my trust in the system is a little bit shaken, and is disevolved once again. And so, I don't know what to make of all of it at this point. So enough from me. I want to bring on our guest, but before we do, I want to play from you a clip from a good friend of ours, Luke Rudowski of We Are Change. He was recently covering the Libertarian National Convention where Johnson won the vote. I believe it was just by 50.5%. So a lot of people were upset about that. So we're going to go ahead and show you the clip, and then when we come back, we'll be joined in studio by Walter Block and online by Jeff Berwick. Here is a clip of the recent Libertarian National Convention.
This is Rick Rudowski of WeAreChange.org here at the 2016 Libertarian National Convention in Orlando, Florida. We have seen a contested convention. We have seen a guy run up on stage and strip down to a G-string. All those videos you will see in a matter of moments. They will be here after I explain how 50% of the people here are feeling disenfranchised with what just transpired. A lot of people are saying that this is the end of the Libertarian Party and start of the Republican Party. They are saying this because the national chair, even today, told the mainstream media that the Koch brothers should stop supporting the Republicans and start putting their weight and money behind the libertarian movement. The nominee, Gary Johnson, even admitted that he pandered to the Koch brothers, asking them for money for his political campaign. Now, there was a contested convention here. There was 2 rounds of voting, first to get Gary into the nomination and then to get Bill Weld. There are rumors that the Koch brothers and Gary Johnson brokered a deal to have Bill Weld a part of their ticket in order to be more friendly to the Kochs. Now, Bill Weld is a former Republican governor of Massachusetts. He has enacted anti-Second Amendment policies. He is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, and he has even chaired a committee by the Council on Foreign Relations calling for a North American Union with Heidi Cruz. You saw Gary Johnson today. You could see the video right before this one with his acceptance speech telling people we need to elect Bill Weld as my VP, because then we could get over $250 million and then we could get mainstream media attention. We have seen the mainstream media pick up Bill Weld. We have seen the mainstream media pick up Gary Johnson ever since that ticket was announced. We all know the Koch brothers are just another right-wing elite backers of the political machine. They invest a little bit of money into the political system, and then those politicians who receive money for them give them a return on that investment by making policies that grow their corporate empire. And right now, we have 2 former Republican governors running on the Libertarian ticket, pandering to the Koch brothers with the Libertarian Party. And we also know that the Koch brothers in this election have said favorable things and are considering even voting for Hillary Clinton. So do you think this Libertarian ticket with 2 former Republican governors on it will have an effect on this election? Will they leak votes away from Donald Trump? Let me know in the comment section below what you think of this new Libertarian Party, this new Libertarian ticket that is going to be running in the 2016 elections. And here is a video of what we saw here today on Snapchat. Follow me on Luke We Are Changed to see it live. And this is what transpired today. So today, we have decided to go to Orlando and cover the Libertarian Convention, which you're seeing unfold right in front of us.
Right now, we started a chant. I got involved. Anybody but Gary Johnson. Anybody but a candidate that sounds like a Republican.
Here protesting Gary Johnson. Clinch the Libertarian nomination, you need 50% of the vote here at the convention. Gary Johnson got 49.5, which makes it a brokered convention. The second round of voting, the voting is being counted now, and if one candidate gets the majority, 50%, he automatically gets the nomination for the Libertarians. Johnson just got 55% of the vote. He's walking past us, and it looks like he will be the nominee for the Libertarians this year for the election. Right now, there is a vote taking place whether the delegation here could decide who the VP will be for Gary Johnson. That vote is taking. Johnson already has a VP pick that's connected with the Koch brothers, CFR, and North American Union, but now the delegation is voting here if the other candidates could be.
Jim Gray in 2012 did not make one national media appearance, and don't think we didn't try to have Jim Gray be.
We're at the press conference now. The vote for VP will take place in 30 minutes.
How will the coordination take place between the party and the
Johnson?
So the coordination will take place according to what
Other candidates are supporting a different VP pick than who Gary Johnson has selected. The voting will begin shortly. Bill Weld, the VP pick for Gary Johnson, that's being voted on and debated right now. There is some contention over Bill Weld, Gary Johnson's VP pick. The former governor supported anti-gun legislation in Massachusetts and also was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, and he chaired a committee for the North American Union with Heidi Cruz, and that's why there's contention right now, and the people are voting inside whether they will allow him to be the VP for Gary Johnson or if they will select a new one. The votes are in.
As those who are standing in the front, please stand lower or kneel or sit down so that people states.
We're spinning.
William Well. We will have a second ballot.
Gary Johnson's VP failed to get 50%, which means there will be a second round of votes. Looks like there's a striptease at the Libertarian Convention.
Guys getting totally naked at the Libertarian Convention.
Here are not entertained, and they're booing this man. People are literally walking out and booing. Results are in from the second round of voting, and we are totaling it all up right now to see who gets the VP pick. Gary Johnson is holding his wife's hands. He looks very anxious during this moment. It looks like William was elected. I've never seen Gary Johnson mix a mixed response. He got 50.5% of the vote. A lot of people here are booing the results. That's a wrap. The event is over. Let me know what you think about the future of the Libertarian Party. And don't forget to subscribe. We're going to have more live coverage coming your way.
Well, there you have it, folks. 50.5%. What a close call, and obviously not working out so well for the over 49% of the people that are probably not too happy about this. But joining us now in studio is Walter Block, sir. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us here today on PFT Live.
My pleasure always to be with you.
Now, I want to talk about a lot of the things that Luke Radowski just addressed in that video with, in terms of Gary Johnson and all that. But before we get into that, for some of the viewers, the audience here at home, who may be not familiar with your work, I want to briefly let them know a little bit about where you're coming from. And correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understand it, I think you first began to learn about the ideas of libertarianism through actually attending one of Ayn Rand's lectures, which, as I understand it, subsequently led to the reading of Atlas Shrugged, which then led you to actually meeting Murray Rothbard and learning directly from him. And that's incredible already right there, to have met Ayn Rand and learned from Murray Rothbard. That's something amazing. But one thing some people might not know is that you actually went to high school with Bernie Sanders. I think you guys were on the same track team. So first of all, just what is it like for you now, with your old high school buddy now running for president of the United States? That must be weird.
Well, Bernie and I were on the same track team for 4 years. We both ran the same events, anywhere from about a half mile up to 2.5 miles. He was one of the best runners in the city. I was a mediocre runner, so I'd see the rear end of him disappearing into the mist sometimes. He was a nice guy, and my views were roughly the same as his. He didn't change, I changed. What happened was Ayn Rand came to Brooklyn College, where we also overlapped for 1 year. We were both freshmen there. Then he went off to the University of Chicago. I stayed at Brooklyn, then went to Columbia for my PhD. And Ayn Rand came to lecture, and I came to boo and hiss her because I was a Bernie Sanders-ite, or a pinko liberal, whatever you want to call it, a Democrat, progressive, I don't know. And I was booing her because, everyone knows that capitalism is evil and socialism is the way to go. And she's, supporting capitalism, which is evil and inefficient, and there'd be starvation. And after the lecture, I hadn't had enough booing and hissing, and they announced, the Ayn Rand Study Club, or whatever they called themselves, that had invited her there, that there was a lunch in her honor and anyone could come even if you disagreed. And I came, and there was this long, long table, maybe 50 people on a side, 100 people. And she was sitting at the head of it, and Alan Greenspan was there, and Nathaniel Brandon, and Leonard Peikoff, and her buddies, and I was sort of relegated to the other end of the table, the foot of the table, and I turned to my neighbor and I said, this capitalism stuff is no good, we got to have socialism. And he said, well, I don't really know all that much about it, but the people who do are up at the other end of the table. So I went and I stuck my head in between Ein's and Nathan's, and I was maybe 20 years old or so. I was a senior in college, and Brandon maybe 30, 35, Rand maybe 50, 55. And I said, there's someone here who wants to debate someone on socialism versus capitalism. And they said, who? And I said, me. And Brandon was very, very nice, very gentle, very sweet. And he said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll go to the other end of the table with you, where there are still seats. There are no seats here, on two conditions. One, you have to promise not to let the conversation lapse after one discussion, but we keep going until we settle this. And two, you have to read two books that I'll recommend. Well, the two books were Atlas Shrugged and Economics and One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. I read the books. I came to his house and Ayn Rand's house, 4 or 5 or 6 times. And I was converted. I was now not a Randian. I just agreed with the economics. I didn't even understand the epistemology and the metaphysics and the aesthetics and all that. And A is A. It just sort of left me cold. And I would go to the Nathaniel Brandon Institute, and I didn't really like it that much, because if you asked Ayn Rand a question like, well, on page 432 of Atlas Shrugged, you said this, could you elaborate on it? Or where did you get that idea from? That was a good question, friendly question. She would answer it. But if you said, I see there's a contradiction between page 482 and 503, what do you have to say about them apples? And she'd kick you out. This was not cool. So I sort of had this schizophrenic approach avoiding this thing. They were the only libertarians that I knew, or the only free market people that I knew. So I would come back, and then I'd get disgusted, and then I'd leave, and I'd come back. Meanwhile, I'm at Columbia University with Larry Moss, and he and his roommate, Jerry Wallows, ganged up on me, and they compelled me to meet Murray Rothbard. I didn't want to meet him because they said he was an anarchist, and everyone knows anarchy is chaos. You know, we just have people killing each other in the streets. So I resisted meeting Murray, but finally they ganged up on me in a nice way, and I met Murray. And he converted me to anarchism in about 5 minutes. Austrianism took a little longer because I was getting my PhD with Gary Becker at Columbia, and I had a vested interest in neoclassical economics. So it took me a while, but I'm now a free market anarchist, Austrian economist, libertarian.
Right. So most people, we all know the joke. I mean, the difference, between a statist and an anarchist, going in between that minarchist stage is about 6 months. You seem to have fast-tracked it in, 5 minutes from statist to full-blown anarchist?
Well, Murray Rothbard is the man. I mean, he's Mr. Libertarian. What he did viciously is he used my own arguments against me, the stuff I'd got from Henry Hazlitt about, market failure, or rather, if you succeed, you make profits. If you don't do well, you lose out. And he said, well, why couldn't that work for police or courts or armies or this or that? Whereas I was ready to say, yes, it will work for post offices and sanitation and everything else that government did, but I just couldn't see the police or the firemen or things like that. And it just took a couple of minutes, 10 minutes or so, but Murray Rothbard is, magnificent. Yeah. So I make no apologies for converting more quickly than 6 months. It was more like 6 minutes.
Yeah, that's amazing. When it comes to the Libertarian Party, there's been a lot of changes over the years, and now, obviously, Gary Johnson just got the pick. For people who heard me in the intro mention that you are doing this Libertarians for Trump campaign, some people may be confused. It may sound like an oxymoron or some sort of confusion as to, well, why wouldn't you be supporting the Libertarian Party if you're a libertarian? So what would you say to the people who are wondering, why Trump and not your own party?
Well, first of all, the reason we started Libertarians for Trump, it had nothing to do with the Libertarian Party. It was mainly to get the Republican nomination. This is before he had it. This is when there was still Kasich and Cruz. And we felt that Donald was the best of those three, and the best of every other Republican candidate, with the exception of Rand Paul. And we thought that he would be cheated out of his rightful ownership of the candidacy of the GOP. So we were just trying to get him the Republican nomination. So we weren't even thinking of the Libertarian Party. We're just thinking intra-GOP, and we wanted him to get it because we thought he was the best, with the exception perhaps of Rand Paul. But Rand Paul was no longer in at the time we started. So he was by far the best. I mean, to me, there are really three issues that libertarianism has views on. One is foreign policy, the other is economic policy, and the third is personal liberties. And of those three, foreign policy is much more important than the other two put together. And I say that even though I'm an economist, and you think I would think that economics is more important, but no, foreign policy is more important. As Bob Higgs and Murray Rothbard have demonstrated, that foreign policy is sort of like the dog, and economic policy is the tail, and the dog wags the tail, not the other way around. Namely, foreign policy determines economic policy. And if we're at war, you know, the government increases, and then there's this ratchet effect that it decreases a little bit, never gets back to where it was before the war. So we keep having creeping statism with wars. So it's very important to stop wars. Apart from the most important reason to stop wars is that it kills innocent people. And what libertarianism is predicated on is the non-aggression principle. You're not supposed to initiate violence against innocent people. And if there's one institution that does that par excellence, it's war. So where does my man Donald stand on war? Well, he's a little uneven and he contradicts himself a little bit, but what the heck? But he's the only one that said things like, we got to stop NATO, or NATO, the time for NATO is over. No one else said anything like that. He's the only one that said, I can get along with Putin. Everyone else, you mentioned in the GOP, you mentioned Putin, and they start going berserk. He's the only one that said, we never should have gone into the Middle East. He's the only one that said, look at what Hillary did in Libya. Now they want to, and look what they did in Iraq. Now they want to do it in Syria. And then he's the only one that said, we got troops all over the place, sounding almost like Ron Paul. Or like Bernie Sanders, to give the devil his due. I mean, Bernie is pretty good on foreign policy. He's a little weak on economics. He's a commie, but what the heck? He's my old buddy.
Well, some would almost suggest that Trump is almost tapping into a movement that is growing in America, where people are fed up with the status quo and are ready for these kinds of things. And perhaps Ron Paul paved the way for that. But where does Trump deviate in any kind of libertarian ideas?
Well, let me mention one more where he is congruent with us, and then I'll mention a whole bunch where he's a little weak. The other one is he keeps saying we got troops all over the place. What are our troops doing in Japan or Korea, or South Korea, or Germany? Let them pay for it. So he's pretty good on that, and he's magnificent on political correctness, which is something that most libertarians would certainly agree with him on. That we're sick and tired of this political correctness. You can't speak. You have to be you have to agree with the left, otherwise you get shut down. Now, of course, he's a little weak on economics. He doesn't understand economics, and he sort of doesn't speak from principles. It's sort of like off the cuff. But his instincts are pretty good. Like those 5 things I mentioned about foreign policy are pretty good. He's very horrible on international trade. And I think it was Bastiat who said, when traders don't cross barriers, armies will. I forget who it was. I think that's very true. And even on the minimum wage, he's unclear. But on the other hand, Rand Paul wasn't that great either. Rand Paul was once asked about the minimum wage, and he said, don't raise it. And then somebody said, well, should we get rid of it? And he wouldn't say. He said, well, we're not talking about that. Whereas the libertarian view is not only don't raise it, don't keep it the way it is, and don't lower it, but get rid of it entirely. And maybe put in jail the people responsible for it, because what they did is created coerced unemployment. So he's bad on that. He's bad on Social Security. He's bad on unemployment insurance and Medicare and this and that and the other. So he's not a libertarian. But one of the other benefits of having Libertarians for Trump is, if we have Libertarians for Trump before he got the nomination, and we did, and we've been in touch with some of his people, he's more likely to listen to us than if we said, no one, never Trump or something like that. I mean, look, the way I see it, this thing about, voting for the lesser of two evils, suppose we're slaves on the slave plantation, And the master was nice enough to allow us to have a vote between Overseer Goody and Overseer Batty. And Overseer Goody will beat the crap out of us once a month. And Overseer Batty will beat the crap out of us every hour on the hour. Well, who do we vote for? We vote for Overseer Goody. Does that mean we favor slavery, that we like Overseer Goody? No, it's just, we don't want to be beat up.
Right.
So if Donald is better than Hillary, and my God, you shouldn't even put the two of them in the same sentence, well, then we support him vis-a-vis Hillary. Now, the big question is, well, what about vis-a-vis Gary Johnson? And here, my views are a little different than many people, because I have like a higher bar for libertarians. In other words, if you're a Republican, I don't expect too much out of you, and from a libertarian perspective. And if you're a Democrat, the same thing. You're not too good. If you're a libertarian, you should be a little bit better. Now, Gary Johnson is a little bit better, but the problem is he's only a little bit better. He's not really a libertarian. I mean, he's sort of libertarian, but I give him a 70 on the libertarian meter.
Yeah.
And I give Ron Paul a 99 and Murray Rothbard 100 million, or, well, 100 anyway. And I also give Rand Paul a 70, sort of like Gary. But Rand Paul is running for the Republicans. Yeah. So I have a lower bar for him. But, Gary Johnson's a little weak on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It's okay to drop the bomb. I mean, that's grotesque. That violates the non-aggression principle pretty much, because there were innocent people there. And the point is that the Emperor of Japan, they were willing to surrender. They just didn't want to surrender unconditionally. They wanted a safe face for the Emperor. So who cares about the Emperor's face? For that, you're going to kill hundreds of thousands of people. And if you have to drop the bomb, drop it off in the woods somewhere where no one gets killed, and say, see? And according to the revisionist historians, that was really not a part of World War II. It was part of the Cold War, showing the Russians, look at what we got, and we're going to use it.
Right.
So this thing about Hiroshima and Nagasaki is horrible. And then he's saying that, if I have a gay wedding and you're a religious person and you don't want to be involved in baking or taking photographs or putting flowers in my gay wedding, that you should be forced to? Right. Well, I mean, one of the essences of libertarianism is the non-aggression principle. Another is the free association, namely that all interaction should be voluntary, and I shouldn't be able to force you to deal with me against your will. And Gary Johnson's weak on that, which is, preposterous. And Bill Weld is against guns, or, and for social security and this and that and the other. So now comes the question, well, who do I favor? And, if you were to offer me vanilla ice cream or chocolate ice cream, you know what I would say? Both. Yeah? I'm the kind of guy, I want to have my cake and eat it. Okay. On the one hand, I want to support my man Donald against Hillary, because Hillary is a warmonger. I mean, she's grotesque. She's horrible. By the way, I supported my man Barack Obama against McCain in 2008, because I thought McCain was going to drop a nuclear weapon on somebody, and I thought Obama was a little less warlike, and I think I was right in retrospect. And I think Hillary is she hears Putin and she starts going berserk and wanting to have a war, and with Libya, Gaddafi and all. So I want Donald to beat Hillary. Yeah. And I also want the Libertarian Party to get as many votes as they can, because the more votes the Libertarian Party gets, the more the word liberty is out there, even though Gary Johnson and Bill Weld are not really libertarians. Well, they're quasi, demi, semi-libertarians, but still they're using the L word. And the more the L word gets out there, the better. So how am I going to have my cake and eat it? What I'm going to do is, I am a professor of economics at Loyola University in Louisiana. And in Louisiana, probably Donald will, by the polls, will be ahead of Hillary by 30%. So I'll vote for Gary Johnson, or I'll support Gary Johnson in Louisiana, because Donald has got it. On the other hand, in a place like, say, New York or California or some lefty state where Hillary is way ahead of Donald, then again I would support Gary, because Donald has lost that state.
It's more of a strategic voting.
Very strategic kind of a thing. And on the other hand, you have purple states where it's going to be real close, Ohio, Florida. And then I would say, tough, Gary, I love you, but I'm voting for Donald, because I'm against World War III
Okay.
more than I am in favor of promoting the word liberty. So that's how I try to have my cake and eat it.
So it pretty much comes down. We've deduced we've brought it down to the fact that Hillary is bad and
Yes.
Hillary is pure evil. And if we get her in there, well, I'm summarizing, but that is not going to be good. So anyone but. But again, this comes to the lesser of evils argument, and I want to get our friend Jeff Berwick on the line to help us break down this concept. And Jeff, especially, first of all, thanks for joining us here on PFT Live. As somebody who ran in the Libertarian Party in the Vancouver riding, what are your thoughts, first of all, on the concept of using political party as a platform to spread messages or ideas? Is that something you're still in favor of?
Before Jeff speaks, I just want to say one thing. Hi, Jeff. Good to see you again.
Hey, Walter.
So what are your thoughts as someone who has run for political office when it comes to an anarchist using political platforms to spread a message?
Yeah, good to see you too, Walter. I saw Walter at Acapulco just a few months ago here in Acapulco, the world's largest anarcho-capitalist conference. As far as voting and using the voting process to spread the message of liberty, I think that's the only real reason to get involved. That's anarchists definitely aren't going to win by winning elections, so we're going to win by changing hearts and minds, and I don't mean like George W. Bush and bombing people to death by trying to change their hearts and minds, but actually making people realize that they shouldn't be owned by anyone, and they should own themselves. But you're right, Dan. I did get involved in the Canadian election. I actually didn't run, by the way. When it came down to it, I had such little support in communist Vancouver that it was pointless for me to even go through the legwork to do the paperwork to run. So I didn't bother. But I never really intended to anyway. And even if I did win, I wasn't going to serve or anything like that. I would have just walked away from it. I have no desire or intention to ever be involved in anything as evil as government. But I do think it's incredibly important, and I think Walter would agree with me that Ron Paul was one of the biggest people to create change in terms of liberty in our lifetime. So, of course, Walter knows all the other people who have done it, including Ayn Rand and all the other ones, Murray Rothbard. Of course, a lot of them are dead now. So Ron Paul is still alive, and he actually made a major change through the political system. He would not have gotten anywhere near that sort of interest or any sort of affect that kind of change if he didn't get involved in that system. So for that reason, I think absolutely we should be involved in the political system just to spread the message. So in that sense, actually, I was kind of hoping John McAfee would win the Libertarian Party nomination, because I'm hoping that at least the Libertarian candidate this year possibly could get on nationally televised debates with the other two evil party people, Donald Trump and Hillary, and just being on that stage, just like what Ron Paul did, and saying the message of liberty is so important. And I think John McAfee can so much better say those things and actually stand up to those people than Gary Johnson could. So I was a little disappointed to see that, but I don't really care, because it doesn't really matter, because the Libertarians aren't going to win. So the whole point of it, again, is just to spread the message. And it really is spreading. We're seeing a massive rise. And so I think any way you could try to affect change is a good way. And so if you do it through the political system, if you do it through any other means, through means like what we're doing with the media, any way you can do it is good, as long as you're not hurting other people. And so I don't have any problem with anyone getting involved in the political system if that's their true intention. And again, it's all about intention. So, for example, if someone's going to go vote, and if they say their true intention, so if Walter's saying, my true intention, I'm going to vote because I want to limit as much as possible government, and I do not want to force my will on anyone else through any means, then I think that's fine. But so many people, of course, actually vote with the intention of forcing their will on other people, which is violent, and they're probably going to go to hell if they're Christians. So they should sort of pay attention to this sort of stuff. But let me just bring up this one thing before I finish here, Dan. I looked up on voting the number of elections that were decided by one vote. So this, the title of your show here is to vote or not to vote. Obviously, if you're going to vote, if you're going to go and stand in a little booth, so archaic and weird, and tick a little box, you would think you'd want to have some sort of effect. The number of elections decided by one vote, there's not very many. I found one in 1910 in England. There was one in 2008, actually, in India, and there was a few other ones. Most of them were in the early 1900s or 1800s by one vote. So really, as far as to vote or not to vote, as far as affecting change, the chances of that are 1 in a million. And if you are actually voting because you want to force your will on others, then you're evil. And that's basically how it is. And anything else that anyone else does and to affect change through the political system is evil, and I don't support it. But if all you're trying to do is spread the information, and if you truly are just trying to get the least evil one in, I don't have a problem with you doing that. I wouldn't personally do it myself. I don't want anything to do with the system, but you're not actually initiating violence by doing that, so I have no problem with that. It's very easy as an anarchist to decide how you feel about something. Is that person actually initiating violence against others? If the answer is no, then I have absolutely no problem with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, when it comes to voting, what about, I'm curious about the none of the above option. And could we ever strive towards not voting being something to strive for, in the sense that you could actually show up and make it known that you don't like any of the options? What are your thoughts on this third option of, I don't like any of my choices?
Well, you do have that choice, not in the political vote for the United States, but usually the Libertarian Party has that option. But it would be very rare. I don't think the GOP or the Democrats have that. I wanted to make a few comments on what Jeff said. I think we're 99% in agreement, but one thing he and I overlap, I also ran for office, and it was New York State Assembly in 1969. This is before the formation of the National Libertarian Party. I ran for office in New York State, and had I won, I would have done it. I would have joined, unlike Jeff, but it's just a matter of taste. And if Jeff had won in commie Vancouver, I would have urged him to take up his role as a member of Parliament, or rather a member of the MLA, a member of the Legislative Assembly, because he would have a much bigger megaphone. He would go to Victoria and pipe up about freedom and make a pain in the ass of himself. I mean this is a compliment to the bad guys. So we slightly disagree on that, but that's just a matter of taste. It's just that we have that parallel. This thing about force your will on others, here I don't know that I can go along with Jeff entirely, because it seems to me that when we had this election between Overseer Goody and Overseer Batty, and I voted for Goody, and you're a masochist, you wanted Batty? Well, the very nature of voting is forcing your will on the minority. That's what it is. So the idea, there's motivation and then there's action. And Jeff is placing so much emphasis on the motivation, which I think is important in determining whether it's a crime or an accident. But still, we have to look at what you actually did and what you actually do when you vote. I mean, if I vote for Donald, and whether I'm the single person that settles it or not, which is very unlikely, as Jeff correctly said, still I'm forcing my will on all the people that want a Hillary. They really want Hillary because she'd be the first woman, and this and that and the other, and she'd bring socialism or whatever. So you're sort of forcing your will. Now, this thing about McAfee and the other candidates, we haven't really had too many good libertarian presidential candidates. There was Harry Brown, who was very, very good, and then there was Ron Paul, who was excellent, and there were one or two others. But Bob Barr was horrible. And this guy McAfee, he's against the non-aggression principle, which is
no. I think you've got that confused. That's Austin Peterson.
Oh, sorry, I missed it. Sorry, I stand corrected.
John McAfee, as far as I can tell, is the most anarchist of all the ones that were running.
But isn't he
actually,
the one that
Daryl Perry was the true, full 100% proven anarchist? John McAfee is probably an anarchist. It's I haven't nailed them down yet, but Austin Peterson's not even close. He's basically a Republican.
Okay, well,
and Gary Johnson is as well.
But didn't McAfee say that he'd never heard of Murray Rothbard? He never read Murray Rothbard. He doesn't read. I mean, how can you have a libertarian candidate who never heard of Murray Rothbard? It seems strange. But, you know,
I'm
maybe
not sure if he ever said that. If he did say that, I would understand where he comes from. He's kind of a wild and crazy guy. He just says wild and crazy things. But
Yeah.
I did have him on Anarchast, and everything he said sounded very anarchist. But I don't think, I think you're right. I don't think he does have a true philosophy. So he was definitely a wild card in that respect.
Okay, well, then we agree on that too.
Well, if he did happen to, let's just hypothetically say he miraculously somehow got in, do you think he would actually have the ability to pull some strings? Or let me just put it this way. Do presidents in this day and age, like Barack Obama, actually, you know, call the shots and pull the strings today? Jeff?
Don't get me started, Dan. No, absolutely they don't. That's why this is also a pointless exercise, truly. There hasn't been any real president who's really had any control since JFK, and that's why he was killed. He was killed by LBJ and the CIA because he was actually trying to effect some change. And ever since then, all the presidents have been a lot nicer about not really wanting to change anything. Ronald Reagan talked a little bit about wanting to change things, and he got shot by George W. Bush and the CIA, and so then he all of a sudden doubled the size of government right after that. So if you do try to change things, so if Trump truly isn't an establishment person, which I'm not sure of, it doesn't appear that way. I believe he just met with Henry Kissinger. That alone just puts him way down in my books. If he did try to effect some change, and I said this about Ron Paul as well, I said if by some miracle Ron Paul was elected in the last election, and he did try to effect some change, he'd be wiped out. These people who actually run the government are incredibly evil and nefarious. They've killed hundreds of millions of people, obviously, through all these wars, including World War II, which you talked about earlier, just dropping bombs on people. Of course, they goaded Japan into that war because they wanted to get into the war by cutting off the oil supply to Japan. These people are just incredibly evil. And so even look at Barack Obama, though. That's very interesting, right? Because he was supposed to be the hope and change guy, and he had a few good ideas like, hey, let's maybe close down the torture camp in Cuba called Guantanamo Bay, still open today. He's now in his final months, and now he's doing all these speaking tours telling about how we should change things. And one of the things he said on some of his speaking tours is, we should really change the system. There's too many people in jail. It's like, well, what have you been doing for the last 8 years? The point is, you can't really change it, even if he wanted to, and I don't think he'd want to. I think he's a complete puppet teleprompter reader for the elite. But even if he wanted to, you just can't. The system is not going to be changed by changing the system. It'd be like trying to take over McDonald's to make it a health food restaurant. It's just not going to happen. It's not what it is. The whole system is not that way. It's been taken over a long time ago. You're not going to be able to change it from the inside. The only way to change it is to create a new system that makes the old system obsolete, and that's what we're doing with things like Bitcoin and creating all kinds of decentralized applications now that the government can't shut down. And hopefully soon everyone just stops paying taxes and starves the beast.
Well, I wanted to support what Jeff said about this assassination business. I think he was dead on, pardon the expression, dead on, but exactly accurate. I think if Ron Paul had got in, somehow he was president, he would last a couple of weeks, and that would be about it. And this brings me to my advice to Donald Trump for who he should pick as a vice president. And my theory is he should pick Rand Paul. Why Rand Paul? Because the powers that be will assassinate Donald, I fear. But if they get a vice president that they hate just as much, or almost as much, then 2 assassinations would be too much. Everyone would see through it, maybe, hopefully. So if he picked Rand Paul and the power, a safety net, an insurance policy, a life preservation, a life preserver, if he picked Rand Paul, then they wouldn't be so hopped up to assassinate him, because Rand Paul they hate also. On the other hand, I think that the imperial presidency has got a lot of power now. Here, Jeff and I see it a little differently. Certainly with the Supreme Court nominations, when Hillary gets in, or if Hillary, pardon the expression, I said when Hillary gets in, I take it back. If she gets in, the Supreme Court, there's only one vacancy now, but there are 2 or 3 people that are in their late 70s or early 80s, and she might be appointing 3 or 4 people. So that's important. And also, the president has a lot of power in foreign policy. unilaterally, Obama or Hillary or Donald or anyone can send troops to, I don't know, Bolivia or to Mars or, wherever they want. And they can pull troops back. And the reason that Ron might have got assassinated, happily he didn't, is he would have started pulling troops back. So the president has some power. I agree with Jeff. He's got very little power. He's got to get Congress to go along with him. And unless there was a Libertarian Congress, he's not getting rid of the Fed. He's not going to, get rid of the minimum wage. He's not going to get rid of the banksters and all that. But in foreign policy, which I think still is the most important of the three, he would have some power. And so there is some power of the president. Apart from promoting liberty, I think, we want the lesser of two evils. We want overseer goody rather than overseer baddie. And I think Donald Trump is overseer goody, and Hillary, the evil witch of the West, or whatever you want to call her, is overseer baddie.
Well,
for the record, guys, I actually hope if it comes down to Trump, Hillary, I hope it is Trump. Although if it is Hillary, it will speed up the complete destruction of the system, because it'll go so evil and so bad so fast that it'll just, something will have to break. It'll either go complete tyranny, or it'll all, people will just get rid of it all, and then we'll have freedom. But Trump would definitely be interesting to watch. He's definitely, as Walter pointed out, he's not politically correct. And that'd be just so nice after 8 years, actually 40 years of just watching these guys read off their teleprompters. It'd be nice to see someone be a little bit semi-genuine, a little bit. So that'd be interesting. And then if he did try to affect some change, as we both pointed out, and if he went too far, he might get assassinated, and that might wake people up to what's actually really going on. So I kind of hope it is Trump. Barack Obama won his Nobel Peace Prize a few weeks into becoming president. He's now still bombing countries around the world. He hasn't stopped. So we'll see what happens. But isn't it interesting that it used to be the Democrats that were anti-war, as far as I know, and now if you are anti-war, you're going to vote for the Republicans and Donald Trump, who's actually a Democrat. Really, everything's so screwed up. But it's a big show, and we'll see what happens. But I actually do hope Trump gets in. I think it'll shake things up more. Whereas if Hillary gets in, I'm not going anywhere near the U.S. until I don't even know when.
I like Jeff calling her Hillary, but I also do want to say Bernie Sanders is pretty good on foreign policy, at least compared to Hillary. There's this joke, an economist was asked, "How is your wife?" And his answer was, "Compared to what?" Well, Bernie is pretty good compared to Hillary. I mean, anyone's pretty good. I mean, this microphone is pretty good compared to Hillary. But to give Bernie the devil his due, he is pretty decent on foreign policy compared to a lot of the Republicans and to Hillary.
Right. So, okay, let's start to kind of wrap up our ideas here with this, Jeff. If I know you're not in favor of advocating people to go vote. So, what would you like to see more of people's solution orientated? How do you think we can achieve this voluntarist society and that you strive for? What are some of the things, if not voting, if not the political platform, then how do we go about achieving 7 billion individual governments?
It's really information and really winning the hearts and minds of people. This is not going to be a violent revolution. We can't win a violent revolution against the U.S. government now. They have nuclear bombs and drones and who knows what else. The NSA, it's more locked down than East Germany now. So, you still have some of these Americans who are like, oh, we're going to overthrow the government by just going in there and shooting them all. That's not going to happen, in my opinion. If they do it, I wish them the best of luck. I definitely wish them the best of luck, but I don't think it would work. And I think you can't government is. It's not even a real thing. Government, the word means govern, control, mind. It's actually just an idea. There is no real government. There's just people creating massive crimes and extorting people while they're wearing these funny costumes. That's basically what it is. And we just need to wake people up and say, stop obeying this authority and wake up. And I think we are through the internet. So that's the way that we're going to achieve real change. And some of the ways to do that is through the political system, as I pointed out. So people like Ron Paul, and if we can do it through, even people like Rand Paul, who's fairly libertarian. If he's on C-SPAN every now and then, and someone hears it, and someone watches it, and then they think about it, and then they go, yeah, government is. I don't want this. So yeah, it's going to be, that's how it's going to, we have a chance or a hope for change, is just through people waking up. And that's why people, all these things that everyone's doing, including Walter Block, is so important. Walter's written so many books that have formed the foundation that so many of us can, when we hear, well, who's going to build the roads, which, you know, so tired of hearing that one. I mean, just give him the Walter Block's book. He's already done all the work, and not to mention it's just a flat surface. I'm pretty sure we can do that without extortion. But that's how we're going to affect change, in my opinion. So that's why I have no problem with anyone. If Walter with his Libertarians for Trump, I have no problem at all with it. Just spread liberty, spread the message through any means possible. That's the only chance we have.
Well, you've been doing it as well, doing it a great job through the Dollar Vigilante and Anarcast. Tell people where they can go. Give everyone the links so that they can, if they're interested in this, want to learn more from you.
Sure. Just go to dollarvigilante.com. That's where I talk about the coming collapse of this entire monetary and financial system from an anarcho-capitalist perspective. We say there that we're freedom fighters against mankind's two biggest enemies, the state and the central banks. And then I have the world's biggest anarchist show, Anarcast, which Walter's been on, and so many people have been on, including yourself and so many other people. So we just talk about things about liberty related on that program, and even that's growing a lot. So we're seeing a lot of growth. So if you're interested in either of those, check them out.
Fantastic. We'll have links in the description, and I look forward to seeing you this weekend. We're going to be hooking up very soon. I'm going to be seeing Berwick in Germany. We're going to be in Dresden, Germany to confront the Bilderbergers. So I'll see you in a few days, my friend. Thanks for coming on, and keep fighting the good fight.
Thank you. Take care, guys.
Take care, Jeff.
All right, so that was Jeff Berwick of the Dollar Vigilante, and as I was saying to him, Walter, you know, what would you like to see? Let's look at it this way, moving forward, not just in a few months from now, or you know, how about in a few years from now? Where would you like to see this go as a libertarian, as an anarchist? What are you striving for? Is it a similar voluntary society with 7 billion individual governments?
Yes, I like that way of putting it. 7 billion individual governments. We should all be sovereigns. And when you want to go out on a date, you have to get your foreign minister to get her foreign minister to meet somewhere. I'm not sure how that'll work, but that's a good way to put it. Yeah. And certainly that would be the hope of all anarcho-capitalists, freedom fighters, or people who favor freedom. There are many, many ways. There's Anarcast, there's your work, there's the Free State Project in New Hampshire, where everyone's trying to go to New Hampshire. There's the Mises Institute, which is one of my favorites. There's the Inside the Beltway libertarian groups like Reason and Cato, who are 80% libertarian, but you know, pretty good. Mm-hmm. In Canada, there's a group like that I used to work for, the Fraser Institute, which is pretty good. Give them a B minus or a B plus, not an A, but they're pretty good. And there's this Mises Canada. Mm-hmm. There's think tanks in I think each of the 50 states has a think tank. There's my university, Loyola University. If you're a high school student and want to study with me and more than a half dozen other professors at Loyola who are free enterprise, come on down. The water's fine. We're a party city. And if you have children or grandchildren of that age, consider Loyola University. There's places to get a PhD at now at Texas Tech and George Mason, I would recommend. And there are places in Europe. There must be Mises institutes in about 10 or 15 different countries. So, you know, the gays used to say and still say, we are everywhere. We libertarians can say we are everywhere.
Yeah, the Austrian economics are
you know, the two people I think who converted more people to libertarianism than any other two people are Ayn Rand and Ron Paul. Yeah. Ron Paul mainly through the political process, Ayn Rand by writing a novel. And it just came across my desk, Doug Casey has written a novel. And it's pretty good. It's pretty darn good. It's very good. It's excellent. So I'm looking forward to that. And, you know, we need, you know, why do the left have all the good folk songs? Where are our folk songs? You know, why can't we have a freedom song or something? I don't know. So there are many, many ways toward freedom. However, I am a pessimist about achieving liberty in the next 10, 20, 30 years because I think it's biological. I think what we do is we push the rock of Sisyphus up, and then the rock comes tumbling down, and we push it up, it keeps coming down. I think that we are hardwired for socialism, hardwired for benevolence. I have freshman students who come to Loyola, and we were in the aftermath of Katrina, and they hear price gouging. They hear price gouging, and their hackles go up, and they say, oh my God, you can't have that, because, you know, it takes advantage of the poor or this or that or whatever, and they don't realize economics. Economics says, look, if we didn't have prices rising when there's a shortage, the first 100 people into the Walmart will hog up everything and leave nothing for the 500 people at the back of the line, whereas if the prices are higher, instead of grabbing 20 gallons of orange juice that you don't really need but you're scared, you'll grab 2 and leave some for other people. Plus, instead of, think of people in Montana, what are their incentives to bring good stuff, orange juice or baby diapers, to New Orleans? Well, there are 2. One is benevolence, and the other is seeking a profit. And if you stop price gouging, you reduce the motivation to just benevolence. See, the point is that these kids in my freshman classes, they're benevolent. And the reason for that, I think, is sociobiologically determined or influenced. Our tribe, if a million years ago when we were in the trees or in the caves, if I got sick this week, you helped me. Next week you got sick, I helped you. Our tribe survived. Another tribe, we didn't help each other, we didn't make it. So we are, not only as human beings, but even mammals are benevolent. Whereas when did markets come? 10,000 years ago, 30,000 years ago? It hasn't had a chance yet for it to get into the biology. So I'm not optimistic. I don't think that, look, I've been in this movement since 1965. And it's true, we've made great strides. I once asked Murray, how many libertarians were there in 1966? And he said 25. In the whole world? I mean, now there are 25, you know, you just walk. You can't shake a stick, but you'll hit 25 libertarians. So in one sense, you know, we are everywhere. But in another sense, look at what's going on. We've got Barack Obama, we've got Bernie Sanders, and Bernie Sanders gets 20,000 kids screaming for socialism. Well, I think that's biologically determined. So then people might say, well, then why are you working for liberty if you don't think that we're going to make it? Because it is the most beautiful, gorgeous thing out there. It's more beautiful than Mozart. And I'm a big Mozart fan. It's more beautiful than a baby's smile or love or, I don't know, a sunset. It's the most gorgeous thing, liberty. And I devote my life to liberty because it's an aesthetic jolt. I mean, I'm a junkie. I'm a liberty junkie. So look, even if I were on a desert island and I had a piece of paper, I'd still write because I want to get it out of me. So I have this urge to get liberty out of me, and you know, if other people like it, great, and if they don't, well, too bad. So I'm going to keep promoting liberty whether the chances are good or bad. It doesn't matter to me whether the chances are good or bad. I don't think they're good, but you know, I'd be tickled pink if we had more liberty. And in certain ways, we do get some more liberty. I mean, don't ask me to mention them. They're so few, but you know, there are some like airlines. It used to be that the Civil Aeronautics Board in the U.S. would have prices that were through the roof. And then what the economists did, to their credit, is they compared intrastate, where the CIB didn't work, and interstate fares. And in 2 states, California and Texas, you've got several hundred miles intrastate, and they were very, very low. Whereas you go from, say, Louisiana to Arkansas, which is the same as going from one end of Texas to the other, very high. So we got rid of that. And you know, we do have promotion of the internet that Jeff mentioned. That's a way toward promoting liberty. So the case for liberty is, you know, there are pluses and there are minuses, and I don't really care. Because I'm going to keep promoting liberty whether we're going to make it or not, because it's the most glorious, wonderful thing out there.
Well said. I'm in the exact same boat, essentially. I think things are going to get a heck of a lot worse before they get any better, and it does seem that it's moving towards this pyramidal style structure of a system, which essentially is like socialism, everyone coming together under this giant umbrella. But at the same time, you know, it's of the utmost importance to expose evilness, wickedness in high places, essentially. And I live for it as well, because it all comes down to freedom. And the fact that you continue to publish works and continue to put this information out there to educate people, and you're doing it to this day. As I understand, you have a new book out called Privatizing Space. So you're literally continuing to do it to this day. When is that book coming out? And
well, the most recent book was Privatizing Rivers, Lakes, and Oceans. My previous book in this series of privatizing everything was Privatizing Roads and Highways that Jeff mentioned. And my next book will be privatizing space, the moon, the Mars, the space race, stuff like that. We're just finishing it now, so it'll be out maybe in 17 or 18. Awesome. But the Oceans book is now out. The problem is that it costs $100, hardcover. But it'll soon come out in softcover or paperback, and it'll be like 28 or 32 bucks or something. Awesome. So more people will be able to buy it.
Fantastic. Well, we'll be sure to include some links to that in the description whenever that does become available. So yeah, that's awesome. We will have all that available to you. I want to briefly cut to a clip from one of our sponsors who actually helped to make this show possible, and this is from our good friends Chad Jacket and Tanya Jacket at the CannaGrowers.ca, and we'll just show you this little clip from one of our sponsors, and when we come back, we'll be here to close out the show with Walter Block.
British Columbia, home to the most beautiful landscapes in the world, home to mom and pop vineyards, hot springs, farmers markets, some of the world's best skiing, snowboarding, surfing, and mountain biking. We protect our rainforests and keep our air clean. BC, we strike the right balance between nature and nurture. But did you know that for the last 30 years, BC has also been home to the finest cannabis in the world? BC Bud is world-renowned for its taste, aroma, and potency. We've competed and won cups, gained recognition from international celebrities. We are the Cannabis Growers of Canada. We create wealth, opportunity, good-paying private sector jobs. The BC cannabis crop is worth over $7 billion a year, and there were over 17,000 farms creating work for Canadians and improving the lives of millions of people. We are joining together to build a free and fair cannabis market that benefits all Canadians. Won't you come and join us at CannaGrowers.ca?
CannaGrowers.ca is the website. Check it out, guys. Good friends of us here who help make this show possible. We also got to give out a huge shout out to our sponsors, Skunk Beard Extracts and Panda Extracts, some of BC's finest producers of medical grade cannabis going across to patients all across the country. So be sure to check out Skunk Beard Extracts and Panda Extracts. They help make this show possible. And you can too, actually, if you want to check out patreon.com/pressfortruth. Even just $1 or $2 a month helps us to continue to produce thought-provoking videos all throughout the week in our weekly live program like we do every Tuesday night. This is our 25th episode here on PFT Live. So we hope that you can check the links in the description to support the work of us here at Press for Truth. So that's all for today, folks. I want to remind you this is our last show for a couple of weeks because I'm going to be in Germany next week with Jeff Berwick and Luke Rudowski. We'll be covering the annual Bilderberg conference, so there will be no show next week. But stay tuned. Stay watching on YouTube, Facebook. I'll be updating all the social media. Stay tuned. We'll be in Germany next week. Until then, keep fighting the good fight, my friends. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks for having me on your show.
Thank you.